Have you ever tried mix and match meal prepping? What I'm going to show you today is some really versatile ingredients that with 4 recipes, you'll get 16 adult-sized portions. This works equally well for single people, couples, and families. So let's dive in and let me show you what I made this week. Today we're going to do a mix and match meal plan, which works equally well if you're one person or a whole family in your house. I'm going to give you 4 recipes, most of them very budget friendly. Actually, let's face it, all of them are very budget friendly, and they're going to make 16 meals or 16 adult servings. So let's dive in to the plan and I'll show you what I made. So to get that beautiful variety in the food that we're cooking, I wanted to make a bit of a variety of recipes as well. So we've got a soup or stew, depending how brothy or liquidy you want to make it. We've got a taco type bowl that you assemble. We've got a fried rice and we've got a potato hash. If you follow along on this channel, you know that I love the one pot recipe type things. I love dirtying as few dishes as possible when I cook. Maybe it's the efficient Swede in me, who knows? But essentially, I wanted to create a couple of recipe ideas for you. And I can assure you, by the way, that if you have kids, you can do a variety of these recipes for your family. All right, so this is not necessarily designed to be a budget meal plan, but I did keep my budget to just over $50. This shop that I'm going to share with you today came to $51.06. Now, I didn't buy everything because I had a lot of the ingredients on hand, but in that $51 budget is as if I would have gone to Aldi Australia and purchased all the items that you're going to see. Naturally, that will also leave me with extra rice, extra onions, and a few other things, as you will see in the shop. I have assumed, however, that you have some form of cooking oil on hand, and I have assumed that you have some basic spices on hand to season your dishes. But that's basically it. So for just over $50, you'll be able to get 16 adult-sized portions and 4 different recipes. I did do 4 different recipes because when it comes to mix and match, it's not just about ingredients, but it's also about the type of meals that we have. I like different textures, different flavors, and things like that in my food so that I can mix it up. So this dish is very nostalgic for me. It's called pyttipanna, and it's a Swedish potato hash, which is designed to basically help you use up your leftovers. You can use already boiled cold potatoes you've got sitting in your fridge, or I used raw potatoes for this recipe, which I will be cooking up in next week's video. But essentially you use some kind of potato, you need some kind of meat, ham, sausage, anything like that. We're going to use some onion, some beetroot, and some fried egg to serve it up. This dish is so humble, but so beautifully flavorful. So I highly recommend that you give it a go and check out next video when I cooked it up. But let's head to Aldi and look at the prices for things in my area. I am aware that a lot of you are watching from the US and you'll be horrified with the grocery prices in Australia. But I wanted to be honest and transparent that this is what you get for about $50 in Australia at the moment. And this is very pure ingredients. I went for veggies and starches and things like that were as pure as possible. There is no pasta and those sort of things, which would be even cheaper, obviously, if you wanted to do that. So the cheapest potatoes I could find at Aldi was a 2 kilo bag for $5.99, which obviously is about $3 a kilo. You can buy the larger bag. So they actually had a 4 kilo bag for $8.99, which I ended up buying personally because we eat potatoes a lot. So you get, if you can afford to stretch it to the larger size and it's something you know you and your family will go through, just buy the bigger pack. It will always be cheaper per kilo, per pound, per ounce, whatever your comparison. So $5.99 for a bag of potatoes. Then you're going to need some meat of some kind. I actually splurged and did a smoked ham for just over $10. But if you wanted to do a budget version, which I have definitely had of this dish, you can do hot dogs or sausages or like cabana style sausage. There are many different things that you could substitute with. Or if you have some meat or some steak or something lying around in your fridge that hasn't gotten eaten, you can cube it and include it in this dish. So the cheapest sausages I found in Aldi at the moment were $2.79, and I paid about $10 for that ham that I ended up using, but it turned out so good. I highly recommend this recipe. Then I paid $1.99 for a whole bag of brown onions. So I'm going to be using onion in all 4 recipes this week, and it's still gonna leave me with leftover onions. So I can't remember, I think the whole bag probably had about 10 or so onions in it, and I'm only using 4 onions in this meal plan, so naturally I will have leftovers to use in the future. And for the eggs, I'm only going to need 4 fried eggs for this particular recipe, but I am going to be using eggs in my other dishes as well. So 12 eggs, free range eggs in my Aldi at the moment is $4.99. You can get the caged eggs cheaper, but I never buy caged eggs if I can help it. But I appreciate if you're on a really tight budget that might be something that you'd have to do. So there you go, very simple ingredients, and you can do your own variety on this. If you've got some other veggies in your garden that you wanted to throw in, I could have added some spring onion or something like that. But this recipe was so nice, so simple, and so comforting. And the beetroot adds a lot of nutrition to this dish. So you got potato, you got onion, you got beetroot, so lots of really yummy veggies, and then you got your proteins in the sausages and the eggs. I have seen people do this without the meat, but as a meat eater myself, I thought the ham it's really a pinnacle of this type of dish. So highly recommend that you give that a go. All right, next up we have one of the simplest things, which is taco bowls. And taco bowls, you can do endless variety. I used a couple of ingredients that I recommend and that we like in this house that are really budget friendly, but you can obviously mix and match depending on what your family likes. So in my taco bowls, I based them on boiled rice. Now I boil my rice with 1 to 2 vegetable stock cubes, because I find that white plain rice can be a little bit plain. So veggie stock cubes or beef or fish or chicken can be a really good way to make your rice more fragrant and bring very, very inexpensive flavoring into your food. So very, very simple. Most white rice or plain rice that you'll do 1 unit of rice, and then you double the water, and I always cook it absorption method, and then I'll just crumble as I put the cold water and the rice in my pot. I crumble in 1 to 2 stock cubes, give it a little stir, and then let it boil and absorb, and it turns out really good every time, and it's a very easy hack. You will see me do this in the meal planning that I do next week. So we're going to start with rice, then we're going to cook up some mince. If you were really budget conscious, you could do 250 grams of mince in this recipe and save the other 250 grams for another recipe. You will still end up with 4 to 6 portions of this recipe, depending how big portions you make. But we're going to do rice, we're going to do 250 grams of mince. The cheapest mince at my Aldi at the time was either turkey for $5.99 for 500 grams, or a mix of pork and beef mince also for $5.99 for 500 grams. So either one, I'd probably go for the beef one myself, or the beef and pork one, because it will go better with the stew that we're using it for. But yeah, anyway, it's totally up to you. Then we're going to get some taco spice. So a packet of taco spice at my Aldi is $1.29. You can make taco spice way cheaper than that if you wanted to, if you had all the stuff on hand. But I'm going to assume that you might not have every single spice in the world in your cupboard. So $1.29 for that. We need some cheese. The smallest cheese block at my Aldi was $4.79. And this is obviously a very small block, and there'll be plenty for what I'm making this week. But we always buy the 1 kilo block, which works out so much cheaper per unit, and you just store it in an airtight container in your fridge. You can even grate the cheese and freeze it. I don't recommend freezing a whole cheese block because it can thaw and be a little bit funny when you defrost it. But if you have extra cheese and you grate it up and put it in a Ziploc bag, it lasts really well in your freezer. Then we're going to need 1 can of diced tomato. I'm going to make, you'll see it next week, I'm going to make like a homemade salsa version, which actually turned out really, really yummy. So stay tuned for that. Then, so the diced tomato is only 95 cents. I got the non-seasoned one because I already have all those taco seasonings going on. And then we got a green capsicum, was the cheapest capsicum or bell pepper at my Aldi, and that was $1.45 for 1 fairly large green capsicum, so that worked out well. Then I needed a can of black beans. I got this from the taco section of my Aldi. It was 95 cents, so very inexpensive, very high in protein. And then I also got a can of corn. I normally prefer to use frozen corn and either cook that in the microwave or in the dish I'm making. But for this recipe, I got a can of corn for 95 cents at my Aldi. And I'm also going to use some of that onion because I have that big, beautiful bag of onion. And those are all the ingredients we need for our taco bowls. Like I said, if you don't like beans, leave that out. If you want other veggies in there, chuck that in. But I am going to show you when I make this recipe how I assemble these bowls. And I've never made this type of exact bowl before, but my husband really enjoyed it. And it made 4 very generous portions for us. So you can really mix and match here and tune up and down the different things that you want. One thing I will probably do next time is include some kind of lettuce or leafy green, but I didn't really put it in the budget this week because I felt like I had good variety on this dish anyway. Next is one of my all-time budget-friendly favorites, which is fried rice. There are so many different ways to make this, but I'm assuming that you went and bought a bag of rice to do that turkey meal prep stuff, and you can use the same rice as the base in your fried rice. I'll be cooking this up in next week's video. I have also made fried rice in a few different forms in previous videos, so I will link one of them below if you want to check that out. But for a basic fried rice, you just need rice, which we already have, vegetable stock cube to cook said rice in and let it cool before you make your fried rice, and that will really bring that extra flavor to your dish. We're going to need a bag of frozen vegetables. I had a mix of old frozen veg in my freezer that I needed to use up, but I found a really good deal for $2.79 at my Aldi for a decent sized bag of mixed frozen vegetables. So that's what I would recommend if you were doing this meal plan from scratch, to go and grab that. I also used 6 eggs, so I had 12 eggs and I used 4 of them for my first recipe, so 6 of them are going to be used for this fried rice. And normally I make my own sauce, so I will have things like sesame oil and olive oil and maybe a few other types of fish sauce if you have some, etc. But I appreciate everyone might not have that, so I went to the sauce packet aisle in my Aldi, and for $1.49 you can get pad thai sauce. They had a few different options. Now, unfortunately, my husband is gluten-free and the pad thai sauce was the only one who didn't have wheat in it. So I did get that one for us, and it actually turned out really good. You'll see it in next week's video. It was a very quick stir together, but we actually really like the pad thai sauce with it. So I think I'm going to get a bigger container of pad thai sauce and have that for the future, because you know, and that is it. That is all you need for fried rice. It is a really budget-friendly meal. Now you can throw in other things like tofu, chicken, leftover meat. You can throw in little medallions of sausages or hot dogs and fry them up. Fried rice is incredibly versatile, and depending on how much rice to vegetable proportion you like, I'm usually a 50-50 kind of gal, so that I don't want the rice to be overpowering, but it is a really good budget-friendly meal if you're really tight on money. I used to eat this a lot as a student as well, so it lends itself really well to that. And the very final recipe is actually one that I made a couple of weeks ago, which is a beef mince vegetable stew, which is a really comforting and very foolproof, simple dish that you can make. I will be linking to that video for you so you can check out how to make it. But all you're going to need for that is basically the other 250 grams of mince that you didn't use for your taco bowls. If you wanted to do a much bigger pot, you could obviously do that. But with 250 grams of mince, you will comfortably get 4, maybe even 5 portions of this soup. So again, the cheapest mince at my Aldi was $5.99 for 500 grams, and we're obviously using half of that for this recipe. We need some potatoes, which we already got for the very first recipe, so that was $5.99 for, I think it was 2 kilos. So we're going to have plenty of potato left over, by the way. You could really amp up the potato ratio in this soup if you wanted to. Then I got a bag of carrots for $1.99. Now you can also do grated carrot and add it to your taco bowls. Carrot is just really versatile. You can put some carrot in with your fried rice if it's not already carrot in your mixed vegetable. I also often eat carrot, just like slice it up or not even cut it in pieces, just eat it like, you know, Bugs Bunny. Carrot is really, really good for you, really healthy. It is very, very cheap. Then we're going to need two 400 ml cans or 400-gram cans of diced tomato. I use the same kind that I use for the taco bowl, so that was $1.90 for 2 cans. Again, these are not seasoned or flavored in any way, but if you want to, you can obviously pick up something that already has some seasonings in it. We're going to be using a little bit of frozen vegetable. If you have any frozen veg left over from your fried rice, you can chuck the rest of it in with this soup. Any vegetable goes. Celery, any green things like peas, beans. I have made this soup with pretty much every vegetable there is. Celery, and you just got to watch and make sure that the texture is sort of how you like it. We're going to use some of the vegetable stock cubes. So for this particular recipe, I actually dissolve those stock cubes in water and make sure they're fairly blended before I pour them into the pot. And finally, if you really wanted to stretch this, and this is optional, this did take me over the $50 total, is to buy a loaf of bread. The cheapest loaf of normal bread at Aldi was $3.29. So with this soup, you can obviously use some of that cheese that you got for your taco bowl. So you could serve it like as a grilled cheese sandwich, or you could use that for some other things too. Whether you are on a budget or not, I really do recommend that you get in the habit of meal planning. Most of these dishes that I've shared today, you could also freeze. I have frozen the fried rice, I have frozen the stew. Parts of the taco bowls you could freeze as well. The potato hash, I have, full disclosure, never tried freezing, but you can buy it as a frozen dish in Sweden. So I imagine if you just flattened it out and let it cool and then froze it, it would be totally fine to make some extra and freeze that as well. But in the end of the day, cooking is a lot about creativity and versatility and looking at the nutrients that you like. Obviously, my husband is gluten-free and I'm lazy, so I'm not going to cook separate meals for him and for me. So I pick recipes that are easy to blend and do varieties on. And the great thing with all these 4 recipes is that you could have these for lunch, you could have them for dinner, it doesn't really matter. But for $50, you could feed yourself for a week and a bit and end up with a few portions in the freezer, which is pretty good for lazy people like me. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think about this grocery haul, and if you like this type of challenge, I'd be very happy to make more videos like this. And I hope you stay tuned for next week when we're going to cook up all these ingredients we talked about today. Until then, have an amazing week and I'll see you soon.